Today we're looking at sewing an open seam. I volunteered to be our model to show you what an open seam is. You can see that two pieces of fabric have been joined together on his shirt and two pieces of fabric have been joined together on his trousers. So that's the purpose of doing an open seam, to neatly join two pieces of fabric together. Now, we'll move towards the machine and show you how to do that. I take two pieces of fabric. I have cut them into rectangles. They are roughly the same size. Remember, this is just a sample. I need to have some pins ready. Now, the first thing that I need to do is I'm going to sew a zigzag stitch right along the edge to strengthen the fabric and to stop it from fraying. So I need to set my settings for a zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch is 2, and I'm going to leave my settings 3 for the width and 2 for the length. Now, I need to reverse at the very beginning and the very end to strengthen my stitch. I start in the ready position with the needle in the fabric and clamp down on the fabric. Then I need to start sewing the zigzag stitch. I'm going to sew forwards and then press the reverse button and sew back, but don't sew off the fabric. And then I'm just going to guide the fabric so that the machine sews a nice straight zigzag along the edge of the fabric. Remembering that that zigzag stitch is done to stop the fabric from fraying. Before I get to the very end, I need to do another reverse stitch and finish without sewing off the fabric. Now, that's come out of the machine and it's a little bit tight, so I just need to move the hand wheel to loosen that thread and I need to cut it off. Now, sometimes it does bunch a little bit, so just sort of smooth that out with your hand so we've got a nice zigzag stitch. Now, I need to do that very quickly on the other one, the exact same thing. So I'm going to start again with my needle in the ready position, clamp down. I'm going to sew forward and a reverse, and I'm going to sew all the way again along the edge to stop that fabric from fraying. Remember, don't push or pull the fabric, just guide it. As you're getting towards the end, I'm going to reverse again, let that go, and that's finished. Now, again, if it won't come out easily, just move the hand wheel to release the thread and snip it off. Now, just neaten up those edges and snip off any extra threads that you may have. There we go, so that one's done. And let's do the same for this one as well. You can also use embroidery scissors to do that if you have them on hand. Now, I'm just going to finish off those last little threads. Now, to join the two pieces of fabric together is very easy. I need to put those two pieces of fabric on top of one another and make sure that they're nice and even. Then I'm going to place some pins along the edge. Now, if I actually pin that pin on the zigzag stitch, then that's sort of a guide as to where I'm going to sew my straight stitch. So I'm going to put 3 pins along that edge. Now make sure again that they meet up nice and evenly. Okay, now when we put that in the machine, I'm going to put it in like that and pull the pins out as I go. It's very dangerous to sew on top of a pin. If I was to do that, I risk the needle snapping and potentially causing an injury to my... Now I'm going to start sewing the actual seam. I'm going to sew a straight stitch on the left-hand side of my zigzag. Now, the reason why I don't sew on the right-hand side is because when I open the seam up, my zigzag stitch is going to be showing. Okay, so we need to make sure that we've got the correct settings. Now, this time we need a straight stitch, so I need to select stitch 1. When I sew a straight stitch, my width is always 0, and we use a 0, 2, so I set my length to 2. Now we're ready to create the seam. Again, ready position, I'm going to start with my needle in the fabric and I'm going to clamp down. Now, the only way to make sure that your seam is straight is to use a guide on the needle plate. So I pick one of the lines on the needle plate to follow and I try and keep my sewing against that line to keep it straight. Okay, we're ready to go. So I sew forward, remembering I need to reverse to strengthen the stitch. And as I approach the first pin, I take the first pin out, keep going. I'm starting to approach the second pin, so I take that out again. And now I'm sewing all the way to the end. As I approach the last pin, I take that pin out as well. And then I need to make sure that I reverse to finish off. Nice reverse stitch. Don't sew off the fabric completely. Lift the presser foot up and take the fabric out to the left-hand side. Now, when I open that up, I have a nice neat join in the fabric. Snip off any of those excess threads. Now, the last part to doing this sample is we're going to sew a nice zigzag stitch around the edges just so that we can make sure that that open seam is nice and even. Okay, so we'll just finger press the seam open and we're going to sew a zigzag stitch around the border to make sure that the fabric doesn't fray. So this time we've got to change back to a zigzag stitch, so we're going to select 3 for the width, 2 for the settings, zigzag stitch is number 2, and we're going to do 2 for the length. So same thing again, we put our needle in the ready position, we clamp down on the fabric, we sew forward and a little reverse. Now, the only thing that you need to worry about here is that we want to actually sew that seam flat, so just make sure that it is completely flat underneath the presser foot, so all the way over the top, and just keep it nice and straight. Now, as we approach the edge, we need to do a pivot, so you turn the hand wheel and finish on the right hand side. We lift the presser foot and we turn the whole fabric and clamp down again. And we're going to sew all the way down the side, keeping it nice and straight. As we get to the end, leave the needle in, right hand side, do another pivot. Make sure that that seam is flat on the bottom. There we go, all the way over, and we're almost finished. One more pivot, so slow down, use the hand wheel, finish on the right hand side, last pivot, and we're going to join that sewing back up again. As we get to the end, the last thing we need to do is a final reverse stitch and finish with the needle in the air, lift the presser foot up and take it off to the left. And there we go, we've got a nice even open seam, a nice join in that fabric and a nice border so that the fabric doesn't fray.